Oh, pretty shot. World Trade Center.
It's a beautiful shot.
Wow. Welcome back to Morning Joe. It is the top of the hour. Donnie Deutsch is still with us, and joining the table, the host of MSNBC's Up with Steve Kornacki. Steve Kornacki.
That's a catchy title. Is that yours?
Good.
You know,
Yes.
pretty good, huh?
Great show. And in Washington, NBC News chief White House correspondent and political director and host of the Daily Rundown, Chuck Todd. Also columnist for the Washington Post. And MSNBC policy analyst Ezra Klein joins the table once again. Good to have you all on board this hour. Well, let's start with what the president is up to. The public approval for Republicans is down, and The Hill is reporting the president will try to help national Democratic organizations capitalize on that. The president has at times been dubbed the campaigner-in-chief, aren't they all, for hitting the road to help raise money. One White House official, cited in the Hill article, denies the fundraising will get in the way of the president's second-term agenda. Quote, there's this conspiracy theory out there that we've given up on legislating and want to take the House, but another official admitted it would be wise to focus on 2014 now, saying we need the House back. And the Senate's got a lot at stake, too, and we'd still have time to get some stuff done. Today, President Obama is expected to call on lawmakers to tackle immigration reform, but there is doubt over what Congress can actually accomplish. In a session defined by stalemate, this 113th Congress has passed just 36 laws the president has signed. Last year's Congress, the least productive on record, passed 283 laws. Public confidence is absolutely abysmal. A Fox News poll shows an even split of 46 to 47% of Americans who think a randomly selected group of people could do a better job. Chuck Todd.
I like that. I have to say, some of their question wordings are always a little bit off. But that's a great It's a great question.
They're getting
Good
a random group of
chimpanzees in that?
They're getting worse and worse,
Good
too.
Lord.
We have a different tomorrow. It's with the Harlem Globetrotters.
Right.
Run the government better.
Actually, would the Washington Generals
Yeah, exactly.
do a better
That's
job?
what it is. Right.
The next movie trailer that we just saw.
Anchorman 2.
Anchorman, the cast of Anchorman.
Sure.
They could
that's a
run the
no-brainer.
place. All right, Chuck. But the president out raising, he's working on immigration. He's moving forward, and it appears to be capitalizing on the weaknesses the Republicans have created for themselves. Anything wrong with that? And do you agree?
Well, some of this, actually, I think there was some fundraising he was going to try to do during the early part. I mean, this is sort of a natural time when you start doing some fundraising. So I think this is a case of the Hill sort of overwriting a story. The president is doing some fundraising. It's fundraising events he had agreed to 6-9 months ago. This is that time of year. But this is an important period of time in the 2014 midterms in this respect. Right now is sort of the last great push to get candidates to run. And House Democrats, before the shutdown, were struggling to convince some wavering potential candidates to run for this reason. Number one, the candidate would come back to the Democrats and say, you know what? Boy, 2014, I've read all the articles about gerrymandering. This seems to be tough, 6-year itch. Call me again when Hillary Clinton's at the top of the ticket. Call me again in 2016, then I'll think about running. And the question now is, congressional Democrats are making these calls again now, post-shutdown, saying, hey, look at these poll numbers. Are you sure you want to wait? You know, people that wait in politics usually end up missing opportunities. Do you want to miss an opportunity? So I think this next period of the president doing this campaigning, he'll also be asked to do phone calls to recruit candidates. You know, that's part of the job, too. That's when you know whether the landscape truly was altered. Forget poll numbers. Is it an opportunity for Democrats to find more challengers in some of these potentially competitive races?
Steve Kornacki, so take the fundraising trip aside, which I think Chuck identified correctly as something that's been in the works for a long time and something that presidents do. What is the impact of the combination of the shutdown effort by Republicans and now the vast problems with the Obamacare website going forward from here? Does it have impacts? Is the House now in play for Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really sort of three games that are playing out here in terms of, like, if you're a Democrat, if you're the White House, and if you're a Democrat in general in Washington right now, and you're looking at this question of, like, how can we govern again like we did in the first 2 years of the Obama presidency when they had all those votes in the Senate, when they had the House back? I think there's three things. One is, right now there's a sense among some Republicans Republicans at least, of actual something close to panic, of like, wow, we really stepped in it here. Maybe 2014 is in jeopardy. So if you can sort of accentuate that sense of pressure, maybe there's a chance that sometime between now and the 2014 elections, you can get Republicans to cooperate in a way they haven't the last couple of years. That's one. The second one is, yeah, if you actually could somehow, and we all know the odds on this and everything, but if you actually could somehow win the House back in 2014, that would put you in line from the administration's perspective to have, a final 2 years to really finish in a flurry like you did with the first 2 years. And the third part of it's the longer game. If instead of, like you normally would in a midterm, in a 6-year election, instead of losing seats next year, losing ground Republicans in the House, if instead you're able to just break even or maybe pick up 2, 3, 4 seats, it puts you in a situation where in 2016, when the dynamic of the election is totally different, when, like Chuck said, Democrats prospectively could have Hillary Clinton at the top of the ticket, when you don't have that midterm turnout dynamic, maybe then if you're only down 12 seats going into 2016, you can get a new Democratic president, you can get a House majority with the Democratic president, you could keep the Senate, and again, you could be in line with unified government to do something.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's get to Ezra on this next story. The troublesome rollout of Obamacare is creating a whole new set of concerns for Democrats facing re-election next year. Senators Mark Pryor and Jeanne Shaheen are both calling for open enrollment of the president's health care law to be extended. Congressman Rick Nolan said President Obama needs to, quote, man up, while Senator Bill Nelson and Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney believe it's time someone gets fired over the handling of the website healthcare.gov. Senator Nelson is the only lawmaker we mentioned not up for re-election next year. Yesterday, the White House indirectly responded to these concerns, pushing back the health law's first major deadline by enrollment by 6 weeks. Shoppers will have until the end of March to sign up for insurance, even if they're not actually covered yet. White House officials deny it's a delay, saying nothing has changed to the individual mandate. Meanwhile, new polling shows Americans are just as outraged as congressional Democrats. According to a new Fox News poll, 49% say the problems with the Obamacare website are fireable offenses. However, a new Gallup poll shows support for the Affordable Care Act is actually up since August. Approval has risen to 45%, up from 41% 2 months ago. And Joe Manchin is taking it a step further. I think he wants everything delayed about a year. So there is some fallout to this rollout, Ezra. How do you see things today?
There'll definitely be fallout, but I think actually, and this is always an important fact when we begin talking about things in context of 2014, is to say again and again and again, it's a year away. The rollout has been going on for 3 weeks, and I don't think many people have been much harder on it than I have. I think it's been going quite badly. Do I think it will be going quite badly 12 months from now? I would be much more surprised by that. Yeah. So I think that the questions you're dealing with right now about how they get the website up and working, these are things that kind of affect folks signing up this year. In terms of how the second year of this bill looks, of this law looks, I think that has a high chance of looking very different. And I think that some of the things you're doing now are important for that. So you mentioned this technical change they made last night. I actually wouldn't put that in the same category of sort of the website and digital architecture problems. That was something that has existed for a while, where you had an open enrollment date, which goes until the end of March. The individual mandate, in theory, wouldn't hit you until the end of March, but because of the rhythm of when you get insurance, it was interpreted that if you didn't sign up before March 1st, you actually could get hit by the individual mandate. They just said that as long as you've signed up by March 31st, as opposed to actually gotten covered by March 31st, you're okay. That was a smart move on their part to deal with an inconsistency in the law. But in terms of what is going to happen for this law in 2014, one, as you say, it's oddly enough getting more popular, even as it has a bad rollout. But two, it's really going to matter not who they fire now, not what they spin now, not whether or not they listen to Pryor and Manchin now, but whether or not they get it right. Ultimately, the American people will decide on this based on how it actually affects their lives.
Chuck Todd and then Steve, getting it right means signing up, I believe, 7 million people in 6 months. They have to get the numbers in. And I would just say that if it's hard to sign up, people won't. How are they? That I think is the concern. The only way this is successful is if they get those numbers. And we don't know what any of them are.
And Mika, that was why there was such an intense pressure, why they felt pressure to get the website done. Yeah. They are convinced that if the website, if they don't have sort of a semi-easy way to sign up, so that these young invincibles, the folks under 40, under 35 that they have to get, if this process is difficult, well, then only the folks that really have been concerned about finding health care are willing to go through that process.
Right.
If it's and so that's why there was, I was talking to some administration officials, and they admit there was almost too much hope being put in to make sure this very complicated website, 36 exchanges that they were having to do, and all these different, there's different analogies I've seen out there. It's like, you're funneling one way, then it tells you to go here, then it tells you to, they were asking this website to do a lot, but they felt like they had to get this right in order to get them. Now, the numbers on this, that's why they want to do this 3-week surge. The White House is now essentially treating this like the way they treated the oil spill, which is instead of trying to deflect every day, say, well, this agency's here. Every day now they're having an HHS briefing that starts today. Every day they're going to update folks. Here are the fixes that have been done today. Same way they did the oil spill. It'll look like it's an all hands on deck, and maybe it looks like it's drowning out anything else they want to talk about for a few days. But in 3 weeks, if every day they've got an announcement that says we fix this, well, in 3 weeks they might actually have done something positive on that website.
Steve, agree?
Yeah, no, and I think the funny thing is the Democrats I've talked to, I pick up on, like, they want this law to work, and they're hesitant here to pile on too much because they feel like a lot of Republicans are being sort of just politically opportunistic about this, never believed in the law, et cetera. At the same time, I think when you talk to those Democrats, you also pick up on the level of frustration. I don't think you think is the right word, because this October enrollment period is something people were pointing to for months, for more than a year now. Everybody knew this was coming. Everybody knew. You just outlined what the significance of this was in terms of how this law is going to work going forward. Can you start getting these young, healthy people enrolled? Can you show right away that this is going to work? And there's an incredible amount of frustration I pick up on just from Democrats that, like, they knew how important this was. They knew how significant this was. And how can you give the other side ammunition like this for this law that, they don't believe it?
Piggyback on what Ezra was talking about as far as a year out and even go further. This is a seminal moment. We are truly, you go back to Social Security, you go back to major reforms in how we live as a country, and we're several weeks into this. It may take a year, but we're talking about a 50, 100-year proposition. And I think in hindsight, it's almost naive to expect such a sea change, such a hard right turn in the way we insure ourselves to go without glitches. So obviously major mess, major snafu. But if we are changing the way we behave as a country, that is not going to go smoothly. And nor would you expect it to in hindsight.
Other things that aren't going smoothly? Anyone here have plans to retire someday? Like, not work and retire and no? No?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Sounds good? Yeah.
As soon as Obamacare is fixed.
Donnie's been retired for a decade.
Yeah, pretty much so. I just got to come here for the hijinks.
Oh, you are retired. I see. Well, increasingly, retirement is becoming the new American dream. A new Wells Fargo-Harris study found 37% of people expect they will have to work until they are either too sick or die. What?
Wow.
Nearly half say they are confident they will not have enough for a comfortable retirement. And a third say they will have to work until they're 80 years old because they simply won't have enough saved. 59% say their top day-to-day concern is simply paying the bills. 42% say it's impossible to save and pay the bills.
Here's the real big problem with that. People who say they have to work until they're 80 ain't going to have jobs when they're 77 because there is tremendous ageism in the workplace. And that's a big problem.
And a lot of other things.
People, if they're working for corporations, if they think they're going to be working past early 60s,
that is
they got another thing coming.
Frightening outlook.
Yeah.
Steve?
And something I think
Ezra, go ahead. Sorry.
Something I think that actually gets forgotten a little bit in this conversation, not this one, but in Washington, we talk a lot about Social Security funding shortfalls. People talk a lot about they need to cut it or raise retirement age. But on the other side of that, you have a huge crisis in private retirement savings. 401ks are, most 401ks, the average person's 401k is basically, to a first approximation, has no money in it. Compared to what they are actually going to need to retire, they are wildly, unbelievably underfunded. Defined benefit pensions have basically disappeared. So on the one hand, Washington talks a lot about how to cut Social Security. On the other hand, private retirement savings are really, really, really not sufficient right now. So we have an overall retirement crisis that we often talk about only one part of it, and we talk about that part of it, I think, incorrectly. And as you say, these numbers show, I think, what a significant problem that's going to be when we begin to hit 10 years or 15 years out.
You know, the other thing here too, I think, is just sort of the looking at this in the context of the Great Recession, of the economic meltdown, of what that did to people's sort of retirement portfolios. And I can think back, it really was like a generation ago, maybe 20 years ago, the presidential election when Ross Perot was running, it was Ross Perot and Bush and Clinton. There was a recession going on, but I remember one of the themes of the Ross Perot campaign that year, it was about sort of, you know, how long will it take for the standard of living in this country to double, you know, for the next generation to be better off than the one before. The idea of that being the American dream, that every generation comes in and it gets better for the next one, it gets better for the one after that. And he was saying that the theme of the Perot campaign and what he was able to galvanize a lot of support around was the idea that, like, maybe for the next generation it's not going to be as good as it was for us. And when you start seeing stories like this, you're looking at the generation right now, the generation that's retiring right now may not have it as well as the generation before.
Chuck Todd, before we go to break, want to jump in?
No, I mean, this is the economic, you know, this anxiety, this is what the hangover is on our politics. And you want to understand why you have the rise of the Tea Party in some ways. A lot of this has to do with economic anxiety. A lot of this this concern about what's wrong in Washington. It is this, but it's economic anxiety is the driving force of the concern and negativity about what's wrong with this country, direction of the country. And Washington has never. And the president has tried to do this. He did a better job of it than Mitt Romney did, which is why he got reelected. Yeah. But overall, I would say Washington in general has failed to grasp the economic anxiety that exists in between the coasts sometimes, of what's really going on in Wichita, Kansas, and Des Moines, Iowa, and Muncie, Indiana. And this is a real crisis in middle class America.
Ezra Klein, thank you very much. Steve Kornacki, thank you very much. We'll see you on Up at 8 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And Chuck, we'll be looking for you on the Daily Rundown right after Morning Joe. Still ahead, he helped bring the Barclays Center to Brooklyn, and now developer Bruce Ratner will share with us his plans to move another pro sports team to the Big Apple. Huh? That's kind of fun. Up next, the co-founder of Twitter, Biz Stone, will get his take on the future of social networking. But first, Bill Cairns, who really needs to get off those social networking sites. I mean, it's
24.
No.
24/7.
No, Bill.
It's great. You should see all the handles I got, all the different names. You want me to tell you some of them?
No. Actually, nope. Okay. Don't want to hear one, just the weather. That would be great.
We'll stick to that one. All right, so as far as today goes, there's not a lot of weather concerns, but we do have some lake effect snow off almost every single lake. This time of year, you get the cold air coming in over the warm water of the lake. It's still relatively warm from the summertime, and we get what we call streamers coming over the lakes, and you can see them on the map here. The winds are blowing over the warm water, and if it's just cold enough, it can produce a little bit of snow. And so some areas that have a little bit of snow this morning, Tug Hill Plateau, areas off of Lake Michigan are dealing with a little bit of snow too. It's not a lot, but it's just enough. Near Cleveland too, we've had some snow just to the east of town and the higher elevations there just to the south of Ashtabula. But Cleveland itself, just a little shower activity and rain for you. So the cold air is the big story. It remains from the Great Lakes all the way through New England, right through the upcoming weekend. Tonight will be the coldest night of this winter season, and we have a hard freeze expected from Kansas City all the way to Nashville and Louisville. This will be a killing freeze, so bring those plants or whatever you want to save that's outside that will die with the freeze, bring that inside. Otherwise, it looks like just a great day out there for all of your travel and business travel needs. New York City, it's not too bad. Temperature around 40 degrees this afternoon, high around 52. You're watching Morning Joe.